So good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We are very pleased to invite you to the results from the CEF SLAIN project, road infrastructure requirements for connected and autonomous vehicles. Today's webinar is being presented by EuroRAP. My name is Lina Konstantinopoulou, and I will be also your moderator. I'm the Secretary General of EuroRAP. EuroRAP is an international not-for-profit association. It was set up in 1999, dedicated to saving lives through safer roads through a program of systematic road safety assessment. This meeting is being done under the framework of the funded European Commission project SLAIN, Saving Lives, Assessing and Improving the TEN-T Road Network. And among its activities, SLAIN encompasses the assessment of roads as to their readiness for connected and automated vehicles. We have an exciting agenda with a lot of speakers and panelists. The agenda is divided in two sessions. We will be having the first session with the results from the project, and we will have a short break around 10:50, and then after 11 we will have a roundtable discussion with a lot of high regarded panelists as well. But before I introduce the keynote speaker from the European Commission, I would also like to cover a few housekeeping topics. So today's online conference is being recorded. We will be able to share a link with you after the event is complete. And we will, of course, welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues. I would like to ask you to listen, interact. At this stage, please mute your microphone and your camera. If you were invited to intervene with respect, please do so via the chat. We invite you to have comments and questions. If you think of a question for the speakers, just type the name of the speaker and just pose it, and we will interact with you after the presentations. We are planning to have a poll after every presentations. Of course, polls are conducted anonymously. You can already go to Mentimeter. I'm going to be assisted by my colleague James Bradford from EuroRAP in this poll. And again, what is important, I know that many of you will be asking that. Recordings, presentations, supporting documents, and poll results will be provided after the session. And I am really pleased to invite our keynote speaker, Gert van der Linden, our policy officer at the European Commission, who will provide the first keynote speech. So I would like to invite you, Gert, to open up your camera and address the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lina. Good morning, everybody. I'm very glad to be here on this to hear about the results of this important project, because this is a topic that is keeping us all very busy, and I look forward to hearing more about it. Now, first, a little bit of a history lesson. This is a slide you may have seen before because I've used it for many years already, and I still like to use it. So what I wanted to show here is that how did we get here? Because we are talking about roads that cars can read. So we are talking about automated vehicles, and how did we, at least from I saw that in the past we had separate evolutions. We were working on CITS systems, we were working on connectivity, we were working on automation, and these were to some extent separate work streams. And what we realized a couple of years ago is that this all converges to the same thing. And that's why we talk today about CCAM. But if there is anything that I want you to remember, because we have this bad habit of inventing too many acronyms, but the most important thing I want you to remember is the M. It's about mobility. That is what we are trying to do. Just as well, if I may, for Slane, I think the first two letters are the most important ones. It's about saving lives. So what did we do? We realized that to bring this together, we needed a platform, an expert group that brings all these topics together and that discusses them together. We had 6 working groups, but I'll be focusing mainly on number 1 and number 3. 3 is the physical and digital road infrastructure. So that directly relates to what we are talking about here, roads that cars can read. And then the first one was important because that is where we started thinking about what is the R&I agenda going to look like for the next 7 years. And of course, this led to the setting up or the starting of the setting up of a new partnership on the topic. So that being said, I'll start with working group 3. This was about physical, digital, and operational. So these elements all come together. And what we did is, well, we started looking at a list of road attributes that we think are important to support automated vehicles and to create those new innovative mobility services. This was, of course, not the first time we did such an exercise. In fact, you yourself and EuroRAP have contributed a lot to this this part of the work, but it is important so that everybody understands these things in the same manner, that we're having a common language, and that we really talk about the same thing, because we often think we talk about the same thing, we often mean similar things, but still that doesn't mean that we can really make progress. The next step we needed is that, well, we need to link these attributes, these road attributes, to actual driving tasks, because we need to better understand what it means to support automated vehicles. What do they really need? Where can infrastructure play the biggest role? And to do that, we started trying to link these attributes, also to make sure that whatever we do is in line with the strategy of the vehicle developers, because what they expect from roads and what roads think they can deliver may not be the same thing. So we need to find this agreement. We needed to get everybody around the table. I think that is the sole reason why this expert group exists, to bring people around the table, a very wide stakeholder community, and to find solutions. This is the only way to define no regret measures and to trigger investments. And then another topic, of course, that we discussed is, we know that there are SAE levels for automated vehicles. Well, maybe we need a similar thing for roads, and in this case, so we're talking about ISET levels. How can we support how can we define those? How can we harmonize that? And how can that help the dialogue and help create different infrastructure support levels? I'll quickly switch to the first working group of the CCAM platform. So what we did there is, well, we said, and I said it earlier, it's about mobility, it's about mobility services. And so our vision is that we need to develop these innovative, user-centric, inclusive, and most likely shared mobility services using fully connected and highly automated vehicles. And when I say highly automated, we stressed it here, we are talking about SAE level 4, mainly because lower levels will not give us all the benefits, and higher levels, well, they're simply out of reach. We also said it is clearly about both passengers and freight, and there are likely synergies to be found by doing this together, or maybe even using the same vehicles for transporting both. And finally, we said this is not only about urban areas, this is not only about highways, it has to be also about rural roads and intra-urban roads. In other words, if we really want to deliver on our promise to give mobility services across the territory, well, then we have to have these vehicles be able to travel across the territory. So as I said earlier, this led also to the preparations of a new EU partnership under Horizon Europe. Where we are there is that in May of this year, the partnership proposal was already published. And by the end of this year, the Memorandum of Understanding and the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda needs to be finalized. And then early next year in April, the partnership will be launched. Of course, by then, in the meantime and in parallel, we are also already preparing for the 2021 and 2022 calls for Horizon Europe. So hopefully later today or tomorrow, we will get the green light on the MFF and we can continue with this agenda. On that strategic research and innovation agenda, so we are talking now about the next 7 years under Horizon Europe. We identified 7 different clusters of activities for CCAM. And I think what we are doing here today mainly focuses on cluster 4, which is about integrating the vehicle in the transport system. So that is where we talk about how does the road infrastructure look like, both the physical road infrastructure, but, and this is becoming increasingly important, the digital road infrastructure, the operational road infrastructure, how it links with traffic management, and so forth. Of course, that was the Horizon Europe part. There is, of course, also the Connecting Europe facility and the TEN-T network. You know this because Slane is also a project that is funded by the Connecting Europe facility. Now, under CEF2, we will continue doing exactly that. We will continue building and improving the European transport network. I think I said it before, but digitalization will increasingly become part of the smart infrastructure and thus of the TEN-T network, because we believe that this will increase the safety of roads, again, save lives, that's what this project was also about, and it will increase the efficiency of traffic. And this is another part, of course, that it will also prepare for more connected and more highly automated vehicles. By the way, those that wonder, the drawing shows in green all the sites in Europe where we already are deploying cooperative intelligent transport systems across the network. So conclusions and leading up to the rest of the webinar, the CCAM stakeholder community is even wider than it was for intelligent transport systems. And to make progress, we need to build both knowledge and consensus, because views are often similar, but not necessarily identical, and further alignment and common language are still very much needed. So the results of the Slane project are also very timely to conclude the discussions in Working Group 3. I say conclude because we need to take stock of this first phase of the CCAM platform and to define, to take stock of what we did so far and to define what the next steps are. So I'm very interested to learn more later today. And of course, the Working Group 3 will learn more about this also tomorrow. The EU partnership on CCAM then needs to further develop this common narrative of what we expect from automated mobility. We need to deliver these mobility services. It needs to lead to more sustainable transport, and we need to continue in this community to foster joint investments. Now, everybody agrees that the infrastructure has a major role to play, so that is not, I think, a question anymore. But the investment levels that we need are very high, and they will not happen without a coordinated approach, especially on the infrastructure side. So we need to efficiently link all the instruments that we have available for us. I already mentioned Horizon Europe. I already mentioned the Connecting Europe facility projects, and we need to continue building bridges between those. Only then can we look at those no regret measures, because everybody thinks that they are possible, but clear recommendations and harmonization are needed, because otherwise we will not trigger EU-wide investments. And then, of course, there is also the increased need for agreement on sharing data between public and private stakeholders, which I think could trigger investments on both sides. And then my final slide, this is and remains a key investment area for Europe. This supports all the objectives of the EU Green Deal. You will have seen earlier this week the publication of the Smart and Sustainable Mobility Strategy, which of course this also fits into. And at the same time, it is part of the European digital sovereignty and competitiveness agenda. Public investment, of course, is still needed very much. EU funds will therefore continue supporting both the development and the deployment of CITS and CCAM. And we hope to see deployment beyond CEF soon. For example, we know that the EIB is interested in supporting CITS. On the private side, and I am now looking specifically at the final end results of the business models for mobility services, I think it is not as clear yet. Of course, that does not mean that the private side is not investing, because it is heavily investing in the technology right now. But we're still looking forward to finding out exactly how this future mobility business model will look like. Because that will depend on the alignment of all players to create sufficiently large operational design domains and therefore very good services for our citizens and businesses. So with that being said, I very much look forward to hearing first the results of the SLAIN project and then the discussion with your panelists. Thank you very much, Lina.
Thank you very much, Herta, for your very interesting presentation. I'm also taking now the opportunity to have our speakers to open up their microphones and also open up their videos. Just to introduce, we have Leonid Lubotina. He's currently working on several EU-funded projects as an expert associate at the Faculty of Transport and Traffic Sciences on the FPZ. We have Peter Jameson. He's a founder and managing director of Anditi and has over 30 years experience in geospatial and remote sensing data to provide real-world solutions for infrastructure. And lastly, we have Rob McKerney, Chief Executive Officer for the International Road Assessment Program, a registered charity with a vision for a world free of high-risk roads. So thank you very much to our speakers for today. So we officially launch this speaking slot, and I will start with Leonid for the first presentation. So Leonid, would you like me to present the slides?
Yes, please, Lina.
Okay, great. You can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Lina, for this introduction. Hello, everybody, and good morning. My name is Leonid, and I will present results derived from the literature review of the SLAIN project. Next slide, Lina. The SLAIN objectives. SLAIN project aimed to extend the skills and knowledge base of partners in performing network-wide road assessment. EuroRAP is in the role of the overall project coordinator with project partners from 4 European countries, and namely Spain, Italy, Greece and Croatia. Main project areas cover the demonstration of a methodology of network-wide road assessment, assessment of the safety performance management of the TNT core road network in 4 EU project partner countries, and proposal for section-specific, economically viable crash countermeasures in order to achieve reduction in fatal and serious injuries. Next slide. Task 7 in the Activity 7 were designed to provide the pan-European view and therefore were not restricted to the 4 countries of the project. Activity 7 included a consultation exercise to lead to proposals for the definition of the good vertical sign as well as a technical review of road sign standard. In Task 7.3, a road survey was performed to collect 2,000 km sample of road lining and camera signal dropout, which means that about 500 km of sample was collected per country. In the 4 states, the sample was collected using typical production car-mounted equipment, while in Italy the same assessment was performed also with their high-performance Delphi vehicle. Those 2 datasets were then compared in Task 7.4. Task 7.5 consisted of a state-of-the-art summary review of the infrastructure implications for automated vehicle, while Task 7.8 consisted of the capacity development for the automatic coding of road attributes. Next slide. The first part of the report focuses on the state-of-the-art summary review of automated driving system capabilities as well as future requirements and challenges for the physical road infrastructure, while the second part of the report focuses on the review of crash patterns. This part of the report is based upon earlier versions of the Roads That Cars Can Read report number 3, where it explored the connection between road infrastructure and safety for both AV and conventional vehicles. The Roads That Cars Can Read report presents a knowledge base of current conventional vehicle collision patterns and countermeasures. It then examines how these countermeasures might change with increased penetration of the AVs on the roads. Assuming that 30 to 40 years in the future, at least 50% of vehicles on roads will be AVs, potential scenarios for crashes involving AVs are examined, out of which some display that possible crash reduction of certain crash types might be as high as 60 to 80%. Such crashes represent like run-off-road or rear-end shunt crashes. The third part of the report provides an analysis of 22 EuroRAP road attributes under some of the following categories, like road marking and traffic signs, road environment, intersection speed, and intelligent transport systems. Yes, Lina, thank you. Next slide. Automated driving system state-of-the-art literature review concluded that sensor fusion and multicolor processing should be further enhanced in order to improve detection algorithms, but also to provide safety redundancy throughout the data input combination for multiple sensors. For a fair and equal assessment, as well as easier comparison between systems, a public benchmarking test dataset should be created. Next slide, please. Besides available literature, the review was also based upon previous versions of the Roads That Cars Can Read report. Conclusions drawn from the literature review indicate the challenge to predict the changes in characteristic and type of crashes that will occur in the future are to be expected. Apart from the known crash risk factors, research is needed to identify new type which can affect CAVs, such as system failures, database deficiency, or even cyber attacks. Future research is also needed to assess the effectiveness of individual countermeasures like rumble strips or adjustment to lane width with increase in CAV penetration rates. Next slide, please. The following slides will present state-of-the-art literature review, conclusions and recommendations grouped according to EuroRAP physical infrastructure attributes, such as road marking, traffic signs, shoulder and central line rumble strips, curvature, VRU facilities, and many more. Next slide. The road marking attribute. As suggested by previous Roads That Cars Can Read reports, researchers agree on the 150 mm road line width standard, which not only improves CAV system detection accuracy, but also has a positive cost-benefit ratio, as wider lines appear to be more durable. Future research is needed to verify the optimal retroreflectivity level in various weather conditions, but also to assess the detectability of lines in low light environment, such as tunnels, and line colors, such as white versus yellow lines. Next slide, please. Common recognition errors are caused by the quality, quantity, visibility, or clarity of the traffic sign. Harmonization of traffic sign at EU level is required, as more diverse range of sign types and formats used requires a larger sign recognition system training set. Further research should focus on the environmental impact on sign readability. Larger area that a CAV needs to look for signs results in a greater amount of data that needs to be processed for the system interpretation task. Also, to improve traffic sign recognition system, it is necessary to develop a methodology for the classification of horizontal and vertical traffic sign anomalies. Next slide. Shoulder rumble strips and central line rumble strips can significantly reduce the risk of severe collisions and the specific collision types for CAV vehicles, such as run-off-road and head-on collision. Effectiveness of central line rumble strips should be assessed by future research. Next slide. Managed lanes, such as a dedicated lane for connected and automated vehicles, can provide not only technological accommodation, but also desired market incentives for road users to adopt CAV in the near future. When a transport infrastructure is used by CAVs, the capacity will differ from what a transport infrastructure used by human drivers, either in the capacity of the route section or the traffic flow. Future research needs to investigate the effects of traffic safety on carriageway, road capacity, dedicated lanes or segregated lanes, and safe harbor areas, while considering ADS system for vehicles and trucks. Next slide. When assessing the lane width, researchers conclude that future lanes could be narrower, as lane keeping system can maintain a central position better than human drivers, but not if the lane is narrower than 2.5 meters, as it causes system disengagement. As a result, recommendation of a lane width of 2.72 meters had found to be the critical lane width for safe system operation. CAV equipped with lane departure warning and lane keeping aid systems are highly dependent on road safety characteristics, such as lane markings and shoulder width. Future research should focus on the impact lane and paved shoulder width on CAV performance. Next slide, thank you. On undivided roads, rumble strips or in-vehicle lane support systems such as lane departure warning, lane keeping aid systems, and lane emergency lane keeping have the potential to play an important role to reduce unintentional lane drifting and reduce crashes. Future research should focus on the impact of median on CAV performance. Next slide. There are numerous factors that influence road condition, for example, wet or icy surface or maintenance works. Therefore, accurate weather and road maintenance information plays a key role together with direct crash event information. Early research showed a positive relation among early detection of pavement distress and reduction of fatal traffic casualties. In addition to that, there is a correlation among the road condition and CAV dedicated lanes, as this will accelerate the appearance of rutting and other pavement deteriorations. Research recommends proactive monitoring of the road condition via new technologies. Next slide. Grade is a measure of the road gradient along its length. It refers to both upward and downward gradients. The road design information, such as a bank angle and road slope, can significantly affect the trajectory tracking performance of the CAV. This information needs to be considered, and future research should focus on the trajectory planning and tracking control of CAVs. Next slide. Early research gives positive indication that curvature can be accurately read by machine vision system, but research that address CAV crash patterns in relation to road curvature is not available. Future research is needed to further explore how CAV steering functions take the curvature pattern into account, particularly in higher speed situations to improve traffic safety. Next slide. Ensuring that the visibility of road markings, signals and signs is suitable for CAV to perform effectively may require improved street lighting, either throughout better illumination or more closely spaced lights. Future research on the correlation of crashes and street lighting during day and nighttime is required to optimize CAV related to road safety. Next slide. Same as the human eye, cameras are also susceptible to temporary blindness or reduced visibility when crossing from low light environment to brighter environment, such as exiting tunnels. Besides cameras, tunnels can also impact the CAV positioning system, making it quite inaccurate. That's why additional system must be added to increase vehicle position detection in GPS shadow areas. Next slide. CAVs can have problems localizing the vehicle precisely in the surroundings, which are caused by the large volume of data needed to be processed in real time. To gradually solve the object recognition problems, the vehicle should have a detailed prior knowledge of the traffic infrastructure on the planned route. This can take place throughout highly developed maps within its navigation system. More research is required in evaluating the effectiveness of the roadside object and distance detection in reducing injury crashes of CAVs via high-definition maps. Next. On the signalized intersection, CAVs have the potential to reduce the number of conflicts by 20 to 65%, assuming high CAV penetration rates. For the roundabout, the number of conflicts can potentially be reduced by 29% to 64%. Future research should focus on the potential difference in crash patterns at different CAV fleet penetration rates with various network design formats. Next slide. Studies found that there are still cases when it's relatively difficult to determine the lighting color of the lamp due to the surrounding brightness. For example, in case of the sunlight from behind the vehicle, all lamps can appear to be lit. Moreover, in some cases, yellow and red lighting colors could be visually recognized to the same color, thus causing false positive detection. Future research is required on traffic light recognition in conditions such as rain and snow, detecting traffic lights at greater distances, and recognition in better illumination settings. Next, please. CAVs could bring a change to road design, and potentially narrower lanes would leave more space for cyclists. Conflicts between vehicles and cyclists could be reduced, and even the remaining conflicts could have less severe consequences, as human-driven vehicles would represent a smaller share in the traffic flow. Further research in object recognition is needed due to the unpredictable cyclist behavior, but also on vehicle-cyclist conflict occurrence and consequence. Next slide. Research to date states that CAV sensor and algorithms are not capable of detecting and identifying power two-wheelers. It means that future research need to focus on sensor and algorithms necessary to detect and identify power two-wheelers. Next one. Real-time object recognition studies have so far indicated satisfactory results for the detection of pedestrians using crossings. It is important that sensor system can detect pedestrians crossing due to reduce the risk of a collision. Human-machine interface can also increase pedestrian safety if the CAV communicates its intention with the surrounding environment. Future research should focus on sensing and detecting capabilities for pedestrian crossing facilities to reduce risk of fatal collision in urban and regional areas. Next slide. A CAV entering a school zone is subject to lower speed limits and must respond appropriately to ensure the safety of its passengers and other road users. Geofencing was regarded as an important countermeasure. It is recommended the future research on sensing and identification of school zone warning and school zones is undertaken, as well as the impact of school zone on CAV crashes. Next slide, please. The presence of parking and the action of parking itself is a hazard to other road users or an obstruction to signs and road markings. Currently, there is no enough reliable data on CAV crash patterns and parked vehicles. Therefore, future research would be needed in the identification of parking risk factors influencing CAVs. Next slide. Speed has been identified as a key risk factor in road traffic injuries, both the risk of a road crash as well as the severity of injuries that result from crashes. Early research has shown that IADS can adapt the speed of the vehicle based on the road design characteristics stored in a road database system. Future research needs to identify the correlation between crash patterns and the CAV speed, as well as the correlation between CAV speed and road design characteristics. Next slide, please. CITS. In this example, roadworks have been considered. Incidents and roadworks will change the road layout, requiring CAVs to interpret real-time changes, such as merging lane suggestions provided by temporary signs and cones. The lack of accurate on-site layout imaging still makes it difficult for CAV to distinguish real-time changes from historical maps, thus making it hard to navigate. Future research is needed in analyzing the impact of its roadside measures in the sensing, perception, and mapping positioning of CAVs. And please, Lina, to the last slide. In the SLAIM project, we have come up with some generic conclusions, and in this state-of-the-art review, more than 160 references have been collected and assessed covering the period from 2013 to 2020 on physical road infrastructure and CAVs. The current state-of-the-art evidence uses scientific and technical papers, simulations, and small pilot project results. There is no clear published or otherwise available knowledge at this point regarding the change required in physical infrastructure to scale up the changes required to make CAV operation possible. With respect to the remaining SLAIM project activity 7 tasks, the consortium will continue working on the automated coding methodology of the EuroRAP road attributes, which will be available in March 2021. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you very much, Leonid, very much. What I would suggest is that we come to the first of today's poll question and give the floor to James. Hi, James.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lena. So I can see that some people have already been active answering the first question. So could everybody head to menti.com and then put in that link, that code, or the other option is click on the link that I put in the chat box. The main thing we want to do is get an understanding of, across the broad range of the people we've got in the room this morning, what are, in your opinion, what are the 4 most important infrastructure attributes to the safety of CAVs? So very much focusing on the infrastructure side of things. So far we've got things like lane attribution, we've got road maintenance and road surface quality. We've got some interesting ones like gradients and curvature, of course. Does somebody want to, the person who put that in there, do they want to contribute and give us an understanding of why they put that in there and what role they see that playing for CAVs? We can see HD map seems to be reasonably popular in the middle here. We've also got, of course, road markings coming up a number of times in speed and signs. Geometry, reinforcing that one of both the gradient and the curvature. That's an interesting one coming out.
Oh.
So thinking about this a bit more, is it just, one of the common patterns coming out here is about the markings on the road, whether it's signs or the lines and the surface you drive on. Are we missing a trick and not thinking about what happens when things go wrong? I'm not sure if many of you have had to restart your smartphone because it hasn't worked properly. Are we going to be having things like that with CAVs? Do we need to think about the protection on the roadside when things do eventually go wrong, which they will do? Hopefully not very frequently, of course.
Yeah.
And I can see, of course, ITS things coming up, whether it's I2V communications.
Yeah.
So somebody put in collective perception. Do they want to give us an understanding of what they meant by collective perception? Feel free to unmute yourself, whoever put that in there, and give us an understanding.
Someone wants to comment about the results? Do you have any questions to Leonid? Okay, I think we are.
Okay, everybody's feeling a bit shy today. It's probably a bit early in the morning for everybody to contribute. No problem. Interesting, we can see pedestrian crossings coming up there. It's good to see some vulnerable road user ones coming in. You can also see patterns like HD mapping and digital twinning. Yeah, some reiteration of that one, which is quite useful to see. Wi-Fi connection, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I assume with the Wi-Fi connection, we also need to be thinking about things like 4G, 5G, and however many Gs we get in the future.
I think we have a question: in what way HD maps is an infrastructure attribute? Again, I think HD maps, yeah. Yeah, I think it's Yap. Hi, Yap.
Brilliant, brilliant. Does anybody want to contribute, whether it's digital twinning or HD maps or whatever your suggestion was? How do you see that fitting in as an infrastructure attribute? Come on, somebody feel brave. Unmute yourself and let us insight into where your thinking was.
Yap, you want to comment about the issue of digital twinning and HD maps? Would you like to contribute?
Yeah, sure, Lina.
Thanks.
I'm happy to get the discussion started.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a question that was already on my mind based on some work we're doing for the CCAM platform that was introduced by Geert earlier. And yeah, I do recognize that a lot of the attributes that are now on the screen, they should appear in the HD map, which is in the vehicle in the end, and the vehicle uses that. And there is a lot of infrastructure related attributes that somehow should become digital. And I guess that also road authorities have a responsibility there. But in terms of infrastructure attributes as perceived by road authorities, I think they don't immediately think about the HD map as being their responsibility to generate that. And since your question is infrastructure attributes, I wondered, okay, how is HD map an infrastructure attribute and whose responsibility for this HD map? Or is the HD map simply the final result once all of this is realized and available in the car?
Yeah. We also have another comment by Arnold.
Yeah, just thank you, Lina, and thanks, Jaap, for that intervention. In my view, HD maps are part of the digital infrastructure. Indeed, may not necessarily be the responsibility of road authorities to develop or ensure that there is an HD map available, but we consider the HD map as very important additional, you could say it's not really a sensor, but additional digital infrastructure to build in redundancy in the overall system and the overall connected autonomous vehicle environment and ecosystem, to ensure that next to the physical infrastructure and next to the sensors that are available in the vehicle, that you have the HD map as an additional way to build in redundancy in the system. But again, about the responsibility to deliver an HD map, I think that could be part of the panel discussion. But I think that's indeed an important discussion topic in my view.
Okay, I would suggest that we go on because we don't have too much time in our hands, and we also have the panel discussion to a bit discuss and have more questions. So I would like to give the floor to Peter. Peter, would you like to share your screen, or you want me to share your presentation? I think it would be better if you share your screen, because I know you have a small video as well.
Yes. Okay, so yes, I'll share my screen from here, if that's okay.
Yep.
And hopefully the video will behave itself. We'll see how we go. Okay, so I'll start out. Our project team is Nditi. We did the analytics and report writing component of it. Factual, who gave us some technical support through the project, and TomTom, who provided all the data that we worked with to go through it. And then EuroRAP and EuroRAP, who've sort of been project managing and keeping us on the straight and narrow all the way through. As we've previously mentioned, the project covers 2,000 kilometres across 4 countries. Croatia has a section of divide.
Peter, we cannot see your screen.
Okay, hang on a sec. Has it come across now?
Not yet. You need to share your desktop. I think that will be easier.
Yep. That's what I'm trying to do. Hang on a sec. Did that work?
No. No, not yet. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you can see the screen now, Lena?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, covered 4 countries. Croatia has sections of undivided and divided road in it. And in Croatia, we looked at both lines and signs. In Greece, again, sections of divided and undivided road. And again, we looked at lines and signs. Italy was only divided road. That's what we've got to look at going through. And we looked only at lines in Italy. And then in Spain was divided and undivided road and focused on lines in that space. The data we used was from TomTom's mobile mapping system. And in the top up here, you can see it has a 360-degree camera system in it, and then it also has a LiDAR scanner just positioned just below it. To cover the full 2,000 kilometres, we ended up using about 120 data capture sessions. So each of these vehicles goes out for about 30 minutes at a time, or 30 minutes per session, goes out for longer than that, and that ended up being 120 sessions. Data was captured between October 2018, March 2020, which meant we weren't restricted by COVID in that space. We ended up analysing about 300,000 360-degree images, each collected at about 8-metre intervals, and about 10,000 mobile LiDAR files, each about 200 metres long. Okay. All right, we'll try this and see how we go. Can you see that on the screen now, Lena? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just some of the 360-degree imagery, and it's showing you some of the computer vision software that we used to assess whether lines were readable or not. And you'll see occasionally it flicks from one side to the other, meaning that the center line mightn't be read, or on the right-hand side where it flicks out, it means the right-hand line mightn't be read. Okay, so I won't go too far into that one. Next one is just to give you an idea of what the mobile LiDAR point.
We lost Peter. So we go to the poll, James, while we are waiting for Peter to come back.
Yeah, no problem. So what we're going to do is move on to a second poll. So I'll share my screen again and then move us on. So if I move to the second slide, so hopefully all of you should see a brand new question if you go back to that same link that you were on. And the question we're asking this time, who would be responsible for carrying out CAV infrastructure readiness assessments? As we put 4 different options down there, so independent organisations, this might be an NGO done through a public-private partnership, or is it the road authority who should be responsible for doing this and carrying it out? And no assessments really needed for CAV readiness, or is there some other kind of approach, some other kind of organisation? So we've had 20 people voting so far. And it looks like it's not updating on my screen. Bear with me.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah.
Apologies for that. So we've got almost balance between, oh no, it's going slightly more towards the road authority. So did anybody want to, in the comments box, provide any examples of who they might think the other might be? So we've got 6 people who might have that. If you could give us some ideas on other types of organisations you might think are appropriate.
The CAV, the vehicle.
Yep, the vehicle itself. That's a good response. Thank you for that.
Yeah, nice.
The government. So on the government one, what branch of the government would you almost see that coming under responsibility wise? Because it almost, I assume by that response you almost mean that it's not underneath the road authority.
Or it's the same.
Any other suggestions of who the other could be? The vehicle manufacturers? Yep, that's an interesting one. Ministry of Transport.
Yeah. Yeah, we also have the mixture of private and public data providers.
And that would be a question: is would people see the infrastructure readiness assessments being one and the same thing combined with HD map creation, or would they see that as 2 different roles? And actually, maybe the assessments, readiness assessments, are actually based off HD map collection.
Yeah. Yeah, depends on the structure in the country. Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Potentially consistent approaches. Very good point.
2 different roles.
Yep. So, Steve, I take that was on my question between the HD map versus the infrastructure readiness.
So it means that someone will need to have 2 roles. Yeah, Peter Jameson is back. Awesome. Good.
Sorry about that.
No, we kept on going. We were doing some polling discussion, but we are back to you. If James is okay, we can go back.
No problem. What we'll do is we'll leave this poll on in the background, so feel free to contributing, but I'll hand back over to Peter.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll go back up a little bit. So I understand we got to the tunnel and then it dropped out. Is that correct, Lena? Did you see the tunnel component or not?
No, not yet. I think that's the problem with tunnels. I think you are cut off.
All right. Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
All right. So this is the web portal that we've been using to store all the data. There's about 3 terabytes of data all up that we've been analysing for this. And this just shows some of the road segments. What we're looking at now is the mobile LiDAR and a coloured point cloud in this case. And the purpose of this is to show the difference between what we can pick up from imagery and what we pick up from LiDAR and intensity of return. So as we go into the tunnel, quite good on the outside. As you start to step in, we lose contact. Okay, and so we change over to LiDAR in this space, looking at intensity return. We can do measurements like the line width measurement we just did, and here a lane width measurement. Okay, and basically it also allows us to do things like find signs, which are the red bits you can see in the LiDAR intensity of return data. Okay. TomTom have recently basically started producing high definition, or sorry, a new resolution in terms of their data. They've combined the coloured point cloud with the 360-degree imagery, a bit like you've seen before. What that now allows us to do is actually look at very high resolution data and be able to get in and analyse it in the same way as we just showed you with the video clip before. It's a very rich data set that allows us to do measurements of lines and signs and poles and all sorts of things that we can work through in that space. Just a few examples of it. This is Ignatia Odos in Greece. This is the A90 in Rome. And then C16 in Spain. And one of the things it did allow us to do, being struck in Australia and not being able to travel, is actually see a fair bit of Europe in high detail working through this project. Okay, so the project involved two components, looking at the readability of lines for CAVs and looking at the readability of signs. For the line assessment, we used the computer vision work that we showed you in the video earlier on, basically analysing each road in 8-metre increments from the 360-degree imagery, and then we ran machine learning over that to actually pick up whether lines were detectable or not. Machine learning takes into account a lot of road attributes, and I won't go into detail in that. We then assessed the lines on the left side and the right side of the vehicle, because that's what a CAV would be doing. We identified where the lines weren't readable and with what level of certainty that was going to be picked up or not. We then went back and checked each of these dropouts in regard to where it occurred, using both 360-degree imagery and LiDAR, the intensity return information, to try and ascertain why the dropout occurred. We noted the reasons for all of that. We then generated shape files of where all the dropouts occurred, and then did some data analysis for the whole of the 2,000 kilometres. Can you still hear me, Lena? Am I still there?
We are all ears.
Very good. Nice to know it's still going. Okay, so this is a zoomed in example on C16 in Spain. In the top part of the box, you can see little red half circles. Each of those represent each 8-metre segment of road that we looked at, or the coverage within those 8-metre segments. What we're seeing is if the right lane wasn't detectable for more than 2 of these 8-metre segments, we would give it a red mark, and the red marks would increase in size. And then if it was the left lane that wasn't detectable, we'd give it a blue, and then various bits. So that way we could build up quite a detailed data set across the full 2,000 kilometres of road that we analysed. We then aggregated that data to look at the whole of the road network. And so in this case, the A1 in Croatia, there were no dropouts along the full length of the A1. Along the full length of the side we drove on, the A1. The A10, which is up in this section here, there were no dropouts. The M8, there was a few sections of dropout down towards the southern end of it, but overall the lane markings were quite good and readily detectable through that whole area. We then moved on to Greece, and here we've got a section of undivided road, which is E85 and E91 through here, undivided road at that end and this end of Ignatia Odos. We found that on this E88, 53, E951, sorry, that there were a lot of dropouts, particularly on the right-hand side as we're moving down the lane system, and the same on either end of the road. Otherwise, along Ignatia Odos, there was only a few little places where the line dropped out, and generally pretty good overall. Similarly, on this road segment from Cavalia to Dante, I think, anyway, forgive my Greek, sorry, sections on either end of it where there are significant dropouts running through, but generally along the main part of the highway system itself, the dual carriageway, it was actually quite good. Then into Athens, a small section of undivided road at this end, a small section on the A6 here, a small section on A64 down here, but otherwise again quite good all the way through in terms of readability. Into Italy, we looked at the A90, the ring road around Rome, and again there's only a few sections where there were dropouts recorded, as you can see, but otherwise generally pretty good. And then onto the A2, again, most of it is in good condition from a readability point of view, a few sections where there was dropout recorded otherwise. And then the last one was Spain. And here on AP7 and C16, we can see only very small patches, AP7 this way and C16 that way, only very small patches of where there's dropout along the whole system right through. So the line markings generally across Spain were quite good as well. We now have a look at some of the reasons why the dropouts were recorded, and I'll start in the bottom left-hand corner. So in this section of road, there were two things going on. First off, the road surface itself had quite a scattered reflectivity or scattered shiny parts in the road surface, which impacted on the overall contrast. The second part that was causing a problem is you can just see in this right-hand side lane that the line marking started to break up and it's a bit scattered in there. That combined with the road surface either side was enough to make the CAV not be able to read this section of road. In this one up here, a bit more obvious, the lines are quite faded and actually both the left and right lanes were difficult to read in that space. If we move to the top right-hand corner, here, up until the road surface changed, the readability was quite good. Once it changed over, it wasn't. Two things happened again. The contrast between the whitish road surface and the lines dropped off, even though the lines were reasonably good. But more importantly, the right-hand line marking just disappeared completely. And for a CAV, if they've been trained up through machine learning, etc., these sorts of significant contrasts are something that would cause a CAV problem going forward. Okay. Then moving down to the bottom right-hand corner, again, two things going on in this space. First off, the line marking itself is a bit faded, as you can see, with black patches coming through it. But more importantly, the shoulder immediately beside it is probably concrete. And the contrast and difference between it and the line was again a challenge for the computer vision to pick up and see what was going on in that space. We then put all that together. So of the 2,000 kilometres, 88.5% of it was CAV readable. Of the 11.5% that wasn't, 7.3% was in tunnels, 3.2% was on undivided roads and 1% was on divided roads. If we pull tunnels out of it, overall, the divided roads were about 99% readable, whereas the undivided roads had a lower performance of about 73% readable across the 2,000 kilometres. The main reasons for this per country: in Croatia, faded lines on the right and undivided roads, which is about 1.6 kilometres out of 128, not much. Greece, faded or no right line on undivided roads, 54.6 kilometres out of 75.9, about 80-something%. Italy, faded left line on divided road, 6.7 kilometres out of 500 kilometres, again, not a huge amount. And Spain, faded or no lines on divided roads, 3.8 kilometres out of about 460 kilometres. Okay, the second part of the project was to look at the readability of signs. And I've got to say, from a CAV perspective, the signs are more of a challenge than the lines, and I think the signs are going to be a harder one to solve than the lines going forward. I do believe that with advances in machine learning and stuff, we were finding that we could read lines much narrower than 150 and consistently read them and pick them up, provided the contrast was okay. All right, so to the signs. We used again the MoMA 360-degree imagery captured at every 8 meters. We then, what TomTom do as part of the navigation mapping is identify where all the signs are and what sign types they are. So, and they store that in their MNR database. We jumped into the database and pulled out the locations of all the known signs in that spot. We then analysed that for the 5 most frequently occurring sign types that could be of interest to cabs or would impact on cabs. We then looked at the sign locations in LiDAR. So down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a bright red mark. Again, that's where the signs are, and we can use our technology to actually find sign locations. Whether it's one of the 5 or not is another story, and that we had to work through. We then checked where there was a location in the LiDAR that wasn't recorded in the MNR database, and then jumped in again looking at both LiDAR and 360-degree imagery to see why. We then put some results together on a country and divided by undivided road basis to understand that. So the 5 sign types that we looked at were speed sign, overtaking restriction sign, stop sign, yield sign, and pedestrian crossing. And of those, there's 1,539 signs about along the 1,000 kilometres of road that we analysed. Speed limit signs made up about 53% of that. The next closest to that was only about 1/3 of that, which is overtaking restriction signs. So dominated by speed limit signs in all that area, right down to pedestrian crossing signs. This is just a couple of examples showing where the sign locations are in the MNR database in crosses, and where the LiDAR data indicated that there were signs of some form, not necessarily the top 5, along these roads. First example shows undivided roads in Croatia and Greece. Second example shows the same thing for divided roads in Croatia and Greece. All right, so we then analysed went in and checked all that through, analysed which sign types were the most not detected. And as I said before, speed limit signs made up 53% of all signs. They made up 63% of all signs that weren't detected. Next least detected was overtaking restriction, 14%, stop sign 17%, yield sign 6%. I'm very pleased to say that all pedestrian crossings were picked up, which is good for the users, vulnerable users on the side. To try and make some sense of what all that means, we had to generate a form of a metric to try and get this back to signs missed per kilometre type standards, so that we could compare divided, undivided, and country to country, etc. So we looked at the average number of signs. We then converted that down to signs per kilometre. We then converted that down to a percentage of total signs not detected. And the bottom row there basically tells us that in Croatia, about 10.6% of the signs weren't detected on undivided roads, and about 25% on divided roads. Most of those were speed limit signs. In Greece, it was 5.4% and 4.1%. Things that affected the readability of signs were predominantly to do with non-standard sign types, or signs, multiple signs on one pole, or multiple signs on one sign, multiple information on one sign, or non-standard locations of signs, i.e. low on safety barriers, etc. Of all the issues that we identified, if there was a standardization of sign and sign location, most of those things could be addressed quite straightforwardly. And we'll talk about that in a sec. Okay, so again, this is some examples of what we found in analysing the data. If I start in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the 100-kilometre-an-hour speed limit signs are down low on the safety barriers, and the CAVs the CAV technology is having trouble picking that up. Here is a sign, a giveaway, a yield sign up high on a pole, and again, the CAV technology is having trouble to pick that up. On the right-hand top corner, we have a speed limit sign combined with several other bits of information, which confused the CAV or machine learning component. And then down in the bottom right-hand side, we have 2 speed limit signs on one sign, causing confusion in that space as well. Okay, so our findings and recommendations in regard to lines. Delineation is the major component of CAV readability of lines. The things that affect that are the condition of the line, whether it's faded, covered in grease or dirt, cracked, or in many instances non-existent. The contrast and reflectivity of the line compared to the pavement either side of the line or the shoulder materials, or where the line's close to concrete barriers, it was very hard to pick up the line versus the concrete barrier in that space. Line width, as I said, didn't play as major role in the work that we were doing. However, recommendations for 150mm edge lines and 100mm dashed lines, as Austroads have sort of recommended, is probably a good thing going forward. We believe from a line point of view that the CAVs will have better readability of lines than probably humans as we go forward. Then the improvement of line marking results in a benefit cost ratio of about 3.28 to 1 when compared to discounted cash benefit costs or discounted capital and maintenance costs. So something that's reasonably straightforward to do, maintain the lines well, and you'll get a significant benefit, is what that's saying. Okay, in regard to signs, this one I think is going to be the bigger challenge from what we've seen, because there are just so many different types of signs. Signs on side roads that could be picked up by a CAV as being important or not, etc., particularly if they're not in sort of standardized locations. So as we said before, non-standard sign types, multiple signs on one pole and speed limits, and then or non-standard sign locations, down low, up high, out wide. And as Lena said earlier on, from a CAV perspective, the wider you've got to search, the more variety you've got to search, and the greater variability that's there, the more difficult it becomes, the longer it takes, and the less reliable it is. So this one, I think, is the real challenge in that space. So just reiterating that standardization of signs is a very important thing to do. Okay, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Peter. We have been bombarded by questions in the chat, and
Good.
I like to start. Okay, because we have so many of it. Let me start with the first one. What was the rough energy consumption of the audit? What is the expected energy consumption of real-time CAV compliance to the available features? That's
Rough energy. We worked very hard.
Maybe someone can explain to us what he means about energy consumption of the audit.
I think what they're talking about is how much effort did it take to do all this?
Okay.
And the
fuel consumption. It says the fuel consumption.
The fuel consumption. The fuel consumption was quite low, because for this project itself, the fuel consumption was 0, because the data we used, TomTom had already collected for other purposes. We just repurposed the data for this process.
And there was another question, what parameters was used as a dropout reference? What specific parameters was said to define the quality of lines and signs, like specifications and retroflexion, contrast color, etc.?
Yeah, no specific bits in that space. We use machine learning techniques, as most CAVs do nowadays, rather than saying go look for something on a rule-based. And we ran that over a series of sign networks and then found out what could be readily achieved, much the same as we showed you in the first place, and went from that point on. Okay. And as we said, what we were finding is that the line width one, we were picking up narrow lines down to 80mm quite well. So things like contrast, reflectivity, width, brightness, etc., are all important, but there wasn't, in a machine learning process, it's not possible to say which one was the dominant all the time. Okay.
And it says, have the signs been compared with existing data stored with the authorities? I think the data have been approved by the authorities already.
Yeah, so it's the data that TomTom use for their published navigation mapping system. So I would imagine, and maybe Arnel can talk about that later. It is good quality. So what we've done is gone back in and then analysed that in detail.
Yeah. The last one, does the system detect the post or the sign first?
We can set it up to first. We run multiple methods of assessing these things. We can pick up poles, and we can pick up poles with signs on them, or we can pick up just signs, if that answers your question.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a first.
Yeah, I would like now to give the floor to James and to take us through to the third poll question with respect to.
No problem. Thank you very much, Lena. So if people could head back to menti.com again and put that code in, if they haven't already, if they're already on that page, they'll see it, the new question coming up. So the question is, what would the biggest challenge for harmonization of signs, road markings and their locations be? So the thinking of this is certainly for CAVs, having harmonized road signs would be a very big benefit. Yeah, it makes them easier to detect more consistently and more reliably. But what are the challenges that we would have in making sure they're harmonized?
In the meantime, I have another question from Christopher. In light of the 63% non-detection of speed signs, what about the use of location-based rules such as speed limits? Peter?
You might need to explain.
Christopher?
Sorry.
Yeah, I can try and explain.
Thanks.
Thank you for the floor. It's a very interesting survey that you've done here, and I was just curious. In Sweden, for instance, the every signpost or speed limit zone or area is based upon a rule, because not just anybody can just put up a sign with a number on it. There has to be a formal rule behind it. And for that, there are GPS locations for all of these decisions. Why not use a combination of optics, like you used in the TomTom, and a database of the rules?
Yeah.
Because
Okay,
63% is massive.
Yeah, 63% is massive. Most of the signs that weren't detected were down low on safety barriers or up high, or multiple signs going, like multiple signs. So the machine learning that had been done by, the process we used was to get the locations of those signs from TomTom's machine learning process they'd used to detect them, and then go and analyze them from that point. But nearly all of the ones, that 63% of speed signs, they were put in funny places, or there were too many things on the one sign for it to actually work out what was going on. We thought when we first started this that things like vegetation coverage, etc., might be a major factor, but it really wasn't. It was more purely the location and the complexity of the sign, sort of what was on the sign, which caused the problems.
I mean, the reason why I asked is also because having the right speed limit, or keeping the right speed, is quintessential for good traffic safety or road safety.
Yep.
People, if you're driving along a road or if the car thinks it's 100, but it's actually been reduced to 60, you could have major issues there. Safety.
Yeah, look, the major issue I think is that the sign, so from a CAV point of view, being able to read a sign, it's got to have a database to go back to. And when signs have many, many forms for the same thing, there's a lot of training to be done in that space. So I think from a human, if you lived in Croatia or Greece and you were used to seeing the signs that are there, not a problem. But it would mean that your CAV would have to be specifically trained for those circumstances, which would then mean that CAVs that came from other countries would have to either adopt a new training system when they got in there or something, or be much broader, etc. And I think that's the main challenge in the space.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I think it will be interesting now to go back to our next presentation. Peter, thank you very much for the very interesting work that you did. Again, thank you to Factual, thank you to TomTom, thank you to you and Diti for all the work that you did, and we are happy in the future to collaborate again in other projects. I would like now to give the floor to Rob. Rob, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lena. And I'll just confirm you can see my presentation.
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Yes, good morning, everyone. So my name's Rob McInerney, the Chief Executive Officer of EuroRAP. So looking after all of the global partnerships that we have with road agencies, road authorities, and all of the technology providers as well in terms of the connected and autonomous vehicle space. And really what I'd perhaps like to pick up on is Hert's opening statements, which I think were very important for what I'll be talking about today in terms of EuroRAP. And that is the need for a common understanding and a harmonised data collection. And really at the core of the EuroRAP partnerships globally is harmonised data collection. So whether that is lane width or pedestrian crossings or footpaths, it's collected in exactly the same way in all of those countries across the world where we've been collecting data. Likewise, we've been learning in each of those 100+ countries what different road features come up in different countries, whether that's between Croatia and Spain, or it's in the United States or in Singapore. So we are learning on all of these different types of road features, intersection designs, all of those different features. And our learning so far extend over more than 1 million kilometres of roads, and importantly have helped road authorities and governments and toll road operators leverage more than $81 billion of safer road infrastructure. And what are some of the things that we have already found out from those assessments? And I've focused on pedestrians as a starting point, and that is that 88% of the travel that we have assessed worldwide, so this is more than 400 million data points worldwide, is on 1 or 2 star roads for pedestrians. And the level of death and injury basically halves each time you go from 1 star to 2 star to 3 star and beyond. But also we can see something as simple as sidewalk detection by CAVs. 85% of the high-speed roads we've assessed worldwide where there are pedestrians do not even have sidewalks. So some of those fundamental physical infrastructure needs are absent for the road users who are in those locations. And likewise, this information, those 22 attributes talked about by Leonid, as well as the 50+ attributes that are already collected consistently around the world, has led to the information about the safety of infrastructure for cyclists, for motorcyclists, as well as vehicle occupants. And to put it in context at the global level, the United Nations General Assembly in September has committed to a second decade of action for road safety. Obviously there in Europe, you are leading the way with also setting targets to halve road deaths and injuries by 2030. And we have also seen the member states worldwide agree on 12 global road safety performance targets. Target 3 is about making sure roads are built to that 3-star or better standard for all road users. And likewise for existing roads to bring 75% of travel up to that equivalent of 3-star or better standard for all road users. Now, importantly, in terms of the work that Peter and Leonid have already completed, is we are now bringing in these CAV readiness elements of infrastructure into the equation and being able to look at the, if you like, the compliance of the road network to meet those needs. So what is EuroRAP? EuroRAP is about the accelerated and intelligent collection of these RAP attributes, including the CAV-ready roads that cars can read attributes as well. And we have a dream, and that is that we can ultimately be able to show and deliver these road attributes information on every road around the world. So this resource from the World Bank, you can see is essentially highlighting all of the world's roads. Now, through artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can look at trying to draw out that attribute information, not just in Europe, but in every country worldwide. And so our AI wrap vision is really about bringing all of those relevant data sources. And I like the comment before about the vehicles themselves can tell you whether the road is cab ready or not. But as Peter has shown, the technology that is in those vehicles can also tell us all of the IRAP attribute details as well. And so one of the major sources for data will be from the vehicle data itself. And importantly, that will be getting refreshed very frequently. So if we can build the AI wrap algorithms to develop and deliver the IRAP attributes and the cab ready attributes, we'll be able to see some almost real-time updates of the star rating information as we go. But also we'll be able to use the HD maps. We'll be able to use the satellite data, the aerial photography and LiDAR data, the street view vehicles and the MoMA data from TomTom and similar sources of information, road user data, the mobile phone information, and bring all of that together and pull that ultimately to paint the entire road safety picture and the cab readiness as part of that, and looking at it safety for all vehicles, particularly during the transition phase. And as Peter highlighted in his presentation, if we are all using different definitions, then we have a very big challenge to create machine learning algorithms that can do this on a scale that matters. Needing to be able to see lots of those different road features, whether it's a different intersection layout, a different signage, different versions of rumble strips, all of those need standardization. And as Gert mentioned, the harmonized definitions become so important. So what's, I think, at the core of this is the IRAP coding manual that for 52 attributes already, we have a harmonized definition for each of those attributes that's already being used in more than 100 countries worldwide. So if we can zoom in on those standards, that harmonized standard that links to the global road safety performance targets, then we have the foundation for AI, machine learning, and the cab-ready vehicles of the future to be able to build a common understanding of what is ahead of them as they are travelling around the world's road networks. And that can be equally a local road as well as a major expressway. And we've already developed some global key performance indicators linked to those attributes that road agencies and our partners worldwide are already starting to adopt. But also we will obviously draw on the final findings of the SLAIN project, which, as Peter has highlighted, is showing up the machine learning and the cab readiness of these road infrastructure features, and make sure that we build that into a cab ready coding manual that complements the existing IRAP standards and specifications. I won't spend much time on this slide other than to say what we realized very early is that you essentially need to draw on multiple data sets to be able to paint the whole picture of the attributes that you need. And that might be Strava data for cycling volumes as much as it might be satellite data for pedestrian footpaths and sidewalks, or it might be the MoMA data and the LiDAR for other fields of information. But really what we're looking at is that all of these different road features is the ultimate goal, and a digital data specification that actually goes with that. And again, picking up on Yap's comment, that we really want all attributes to be digital. And this is the framework by which we think we can help the vehicle industry, the road agencies, and all our other partners to do that. And the conversion pipeline, what's really important there is confidence, is about knowing the repeatability of that attribute detection regardless of the source data. And that becomes the core of the AI wrap approach. So in simple terms, the source data may come from a range of different sources, like the TomTom LiDAR, like the telematics data or mobile phone tower, or the 5G infrastructure technology, physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure that is in place on these roads. And that source data can come together in a range of different ways. Some of it will be ready to use straight away. Others will need to be a computational effort, just as Peter and the team have done, or others may need to be collected on demand. In other words, it requires a specific survey with specific equipment on board the vehicle. And really bringing all of that together will paint the ultimate road safety and CAV-ready picture for our road networks. And importantly, it's not a lot different than what has been happening right now in terms of manual collection of that EuroRAP data across more than 100 countries worldwide, and practically every country in Europe as well has some RAP data there as part of the EuroRAP program. And at the moment, a lot of it is collected manually. And like the promise of CAV is taking out human error. And really what we see with AI RAP is it can transform us from coding that can have quality assurance, but still human error, to an environment where the source data, the conversion algorithms that Peter and TomTom and the team have been creating and other partners, the validation of that then leads to the same confidence of the EuroRAP attributes that can be used for multiple purposes: asset management, road safety, and also the CAV readiness and informing the HD maps of the future with these road attributes. So the process that we picture happening globally and equally applicable to the work that we'll continue with Slane between now and the end of March is that the first part is to understand the translation. How has the LiDAR data been translated into attribute data? We need to understand that to build a confidence level that the data is repeatable and that it is high quality in its form. We then need to check it for that compliance, and that's compliance both against any specification, again, whether that is the readability of the lines from a CAV perspective, or it's the detection of a pedestrian crossing or pedestrian signage. We need to be able to verify that compliance so that the infrastructure owners understand, like Peter has shown, where the dropouts are and therefore where maintenance or other activities need to be focused. We then also need location validation. What is the accuracy and reliability on the 10T network? What is it like on the primary network? What is it like on the local roads as well? And therefore, part of the total access of one, the road safety data, but also the CAV-ready data is actually needing that location validation. And then ultimately accreditation. So from an EuroRAP perspective, again, we're a charity at the global level, and we really see this being multiple suppliers who will end up with these accredited attributes that can be used by the OEMs and the vehicle manufacturers, for some of the technology providers, the road authorities and the toll road operators, the city administrations, and actually being able to have confidence that those attributes are repeatable, quality, and actually compliant with that harmonized data specification that we have. So going to some examples that I thought I would share with you from work that is already happening. Together with TomTom, we met with their senior management at the Sweden Ministerial, and they've been volunteering their time to generate where is 75% of travel. So the United Nations have agreed target 4, which is for more than 75% of travel on the equivalent of 3-star or better roads. And so the first question is, where is 75% of travel? We only have a few maps available so far, but to give you an example, in Australia, there is a lot of nothing everywhere. So 75% of travel actually happens on only 6.9% of the network. So to bring that to 3-star or better is actually a very achievable target. Moving into a city like Sydney, then you start looking at a different volumes and different spread of traffic across the local and the major arterial road network. And so there we're looking at 75% of travel within Sydney is happening on 12.3% of the network. And then we can look at that by speed limits, and also when we move to a city like Bangkok, where 80 km/h speed limits are common throughout the city, that we start to see, again, this picture and this merging between the speed discussion and where 75% of travel is being very important. But we're working on this being available for every country, every city on Earth, and being able to share that with the world. The next major project that is happening that complements the work happening in Slane is a similar exercise that's been happening in Western Australia for the road authority that is looking after all of the roads in the west of Australia. And they have completed 2,000 kilometres of trials there. It's using the similar approach to what Peter has been going through and validating all of the EuroRAP attributes, as many as they can as part of that validation. And we're now extending that to the road authority in New South Wales, that is where Sydney is the capital of, and looking at 20,000 kilometres of road there. Again, looking to automate as many of the EuroRAP attributes as we can, so that harmonised data that we've been talking about and the, if you like, turning the attributes into digital attributes becomes available for their all of their road management needs there. Also, we will be finalising the accreditation framework, so it becomes repeatable for every country in Europe, for every country in the world, to be able to apply across their road systems. And obviously, the CAV providers, their technology will end up in every country ultimately. So we do need this global harmonisation as well as a European harmonisation. The other exciting project just starting is with a Swiss-based foundation called Botner Foundation. They are helping us look at using satellite data and telematics data to identify where all the high-risk schools are in a country like Vietnam, and then zoom in onto those high-risk schools and do our star rating for schools approach. So again, using some of that same harmonised attributes to be able to do very quick scanning of road networks to understand where they are safe and where the highest risk locations are. And obviously really important in some of the low and middle income countries where good crash data is less available. We also have an exciting project happening at the moment with Omdena. Omdena is a very interesting organisation. We started working with them only 6-8 weeks ago. We already have an active project where they have brought together 50 artificial intelligence and machine learning experts from all around the world. All of them are volunteers, and they are trying to help us automate as many of those attributes as we can. And they're doing that volunteer work over an 8-week period. So we will have results in mid to late January, and obviously they can be fed into the parallel work happening in Slane between now and March as well. And the last one to mention is looking at low and particularly low income countries, which we are doing with the World Bank and with the support of UK aid, which is to look at countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, Philippines and India. Can we get where 75% of travel is for pedestrians, for cyclists, for vehicle occupants? And then find those road attributes that matter for each of those road user groups. How many high-speed roads with pedestrians do not have sidewalks in Addis Ababa? That is the sort of KPIs that we'll be looking to create, and they will form part of the UN global targets, but also feed into the regional road safety observatories that are being rolled out, like ERSO, being rolled out all around the world. And so in closing, what that all comes together is our EuroRAP vision is, firstly, the road owners and the road authorities know where 75% of travel is for each road user group, pedestrians as much as vehicle occupants, public transport users as well. So as Hertz said, the total mobility picture. Then understand the road attributes that matter, both in terms of traditional safety for existing vehicles, but also the CAV readiness of these roads and being able to produce that information at the same time to the same degree of harmonised global standards. Manual coding is a thing of the past. Like what CAVs will do for driving, let's take the human error component out of it and realise that success may come one attribute at a time. Can we map footpaths worldwide? Can we map line marking worldwide? Can we map speed limit signs worldwide and use big data approaches in actually doing that? And then obviously all of this data supporting the KPIs, the maintenance schedules, asset management, road safety, the total business of safe system action across road agencies, vehicle manufacturers, and all of us as humans who use our roads. And really not losing sight that we want this data, whether it's the vehicle technology or the road technology, the digital infrastructure is actually delivering 5-star performance on our major road networks, the expressways, whether we are seeing 5-star toll roads like the work in Spain that's already been happening, where a lot of those expressways are 5-star already, even hitting 3-star or better in countries like Belize, or for pedestrians and cyclists, like the examples from Shanghai in China, or from our Star Rating for Schools program, is ultimately delivering 5-star for everybody by 2050, and that'll be 5-star roads, 5-star vehicles, and with the vehicle technologies, delivering and ensuring we are 5-star users and we reach our Vision Zero targets by 2050. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And again, by finalizing your celebrating success, I want to congratulate you as well for the International Prince Michael Award. It's an amazing achievement for all of us. And thank you again very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Lena. And yeah, it's a real sign of the partnerships worldwide with road agencies, the European Commission, everyone we work with worldwide is where that success has come from. Yeah.
And I have not seen any questions for Rob. Is anyone would like to ask anything to have any questions on the presentations of Rob? I see a lot of interesting chats going on with conversation, and actually it's going very well. What I would suggest is going back to the results, James, from the poll with respect to the readiness assessment. And then we can also have both Rob, Leonid, and also Peter, and also in the panel. Just open up your screens and so okay, great. So we can have a nice, interesting discussion as well. So, and also at the same time, would it be great if we also have the final results from the poll on the CAV readiness infrastructure? So, James.
Yep, that should be sharing at your end now. So we can see a few patterns coming out within this data.
Okay. And what about the other poll that we did with respect to the CAV readiness assessment?
Yep. So the final results on that was 22 independent organisations, 27 for road authorities and 6 for others.
Okay, okay. I think it will be interesting to discuss this together with our speakers. So thank you, James, for that result. And then we go back to our speakers. So would you like to maybe comment on the results so far? And will we need, so apparently from the results we see that nobody thinks that we do not need a road assessment. That's good news, I think. We are also quite interesting between the 20% of the 20 answers for we need an NGO or public-private partnership to, let's say, do this, carrying out these assessments, or it could be by the road authority themselves, and other would be the vehicle.
Yeah, so if I can give a perspective, I think there are strengths with each of the approaches. One area that we see globally is that there is perhaps more than 10,000 different road authorities in the world, and they'll be maintaining different road networks. And for most of the public, they often don't know whether they are on the road looked after by the city administration, by a rural municipal government, by a state or provincial government, or a national government, or a toll road operator. And the CAV vehicle itself may not know that either. So I think the road authority, obviously there is a very key role to play, but one of the challenges will be is that there are many road authorities in each country, and we'd need to understand how that comes together. They might be accountable for that data, but how it comes together so it's in a single shared platform for the use of OEMs, for vehicles, for road users, and ultimately for road safety will be quite an important challenge, and one we would need to think through, very much like the way the OEMs are trying to work out what safety critical data will they share. And ultimately, we have to bring all of that together, the vehicle safety critical data and the road and digital infrastructure safety critical data, all into a single platform. Must be our ultimate goal.
Yeah, we also received a comment in the chat that says that the CAV would be could be able to read who is the authority responsible for each road if this information is provided.
Yeah. So Lena, from another perspective, doing data analytics work going forward. Basically, we've been working in data for about 30 years and pulling in data sources from many different places. And if you want to get a global outcome, I think you've got to go to a global solution in the first place. And if you leave it to individuals and you'll end up with data incompatibility, we spend 50% of our effort trying to get the data in a form that we can then fuse it or work with it in the first place, just for the translation of the differences. So I think if you really want to get a global standard, you really want to get CAVs that can work, then it's got to be a global body that's basically looking after the data in the first place.
Yeah, and we are also quite lucky that we are also working on this topic under the that we are also working with other authorities in the RISM directive, because as you know, there is a directive looking on the readability of road markings and traffic signs. And I think that will also keep a bit the momentum of this exercise, and hopefully these results would also feed this discussion as well. I do not know if you want to say anything else, because I would like to have a 10-minute pause before we come to the panel discussion.
I'm good.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Then at this stage, I would like to invite also all our speakers and also our keynote speech And we have Hert. Hert, can you also join to our video?
I can, but I was wondering, I wanted to make a quick comment because very interesting. I already go for, and indeed there are many authorities, road authorities, lots of data sources, and I just wanted to say that yesterday we published a call on the DG Move website because you're all aware that a lot of data is already covered by the ITS directive and the various national access points that is generated across Europe. And so the new call intends to bring all those national access points for all the relative delegated acts together in some kind of federation mechanism to help all the, either on the one hand, increase the synergies between the different national access points in the same country, but also to increase the synergies across Europe, so for all the member states and all the national access points. The call was published yesterday. Of course, this is primarily targeting member states, but I just wanted to highlight this because, of course, it is our sincere hope that we get everybody on board.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Hert, very much. And thank you for the keynote speech. Thank you for the presentation. And I would like to thank you all for this first, the first session of this slot. And let's have 10 minutes to stretch our legs, and then we will be back with a panel session. So stay tuned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I think we can start. I'm also would like to put my slides on the screen, and I would like to start with the ladies first. And well, Anna, I really try to keep the gender balanced, right? So I will start with Ana Blanco Bercareche. She's a member of the staff at the General Directorate for Traffic. She's the Associate Deputy Director for Traffic, responsibilities in strategic planning on traffic management and mobility digitalization, and also infrastructure measures for road safety. Welcome, Anna. Second is Arnoud Desmet from TomTom. Arnoud is the Vice President in the Maps unit, responsible for global sourcing. So TomTom high quality navigable maps cover over 140 countries. And thank you and welcome, Arnoud. Rick Ruitens from 3M, Regulatory Affairs Manager at the 3M Transportation Safety Division, a member of a lot of SEN working groups and our specialists in standards with respect to road infrastructure standards. He's representing also EuroRAP at the European Commission EGRIS platform and also at the CAM single platform. Welcome, Rick. Also, we have Johan Peter Bauer. He's the safety director at ASEA, the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. He has more than 25 years of working experience in the automotive industry, as he's working at BMW Group with many years in senior management positions. Welcome, also HP. I will call you HP.
Yeah.
And then to my fellow compatriots, George Cusis from Attikes Diadromes. George is in technology director at Attikes Diadromes, the operating and maintenance company of Attiki Odos Motorway. Welcome, George. And also Ioannis Machas from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport. He's the advisor of the Secretary General for Transport. And of course, he has an extensive experience in standardization, quality, transport and management, and many positions in other areas. And thank you very much, Yannis, for coming back.
You're welcome.
Here. And finally, we have Luigi Cararini. From ANAS. He's the head of the Technological Infrastructure Facilities and Energy Unit of ANAS Direction. And he's also a member of the working group Connected and Automated Driving at CEDR, the Conference of European Directors of Roads. And he's also a member of a lot of other, I would say, interesting works in tunnels and smart road and technological systems in Italy. I hope I have described all your bios in the perfect order, and I would like to welcome you all to this panel. And I will, of course, start with ladies first, with Anna. So Anna, as a national road safety agency and authority, and you are, of course, responsible a lot for traffic management, what role does road infrastructure play in the introduction of autonomous vehicles? Maybe you can give us a short introduction about that.
Great, Lina. Good morning to my colleagues in this roundtable and to all participants that are following this webinar conference under the scope of the work of SLINE project. I'm really delighted to participate in this roundtable, this webinar today. I would like to congratulate also the previous presentations and the work under SLINE. I think their conclusions and the discussion this will enrich the discussion about the role of infrastructure for the coming connected and autonomous vehicles. Well, regarding your question, Lina, I think I will first would like to point out that infrastructure is and will continue to be fundamental pillar in road safety. I think it's something that we must focus on. We need a transport system that anticipates and accommodates human and system errors. I think this is quite important. I have to say that I believe that we must continue to concentrate our efforts to have a safe infrastructure for human drivers and for the safe interaction with other road users. That for sure will also provide a ready infrastructure for autonomous vehicles. I think this is the point. Now I come with some ideas or some reflections that I would like to share with the panelists and also with the audience. I think that as automated driving systems are still in heavy deployment, we must think about the future model. No, I think that we can affirm that the automated driving systems should go beyond a sum of ADAS capabilities, and the model, both for connected and autonomous vehicles, should be feasible. I mean, from our point of view, which means scalable, taking into account, as European Commission said in Gert's presentation, that we look for a system that can work across the territory, including rural roads, streets in our cities, our other roads. The development of autonomous vehicles shouldn't be dependent on a huge investment. You know that road networks operators and cities need to comply with strict constraints, and we need to be careful and be really straightforward in the development and investment in the measures of equipment. No? We don't have to fail. We really have to find which are the real needs. Okay. Now you may ask me what we should do then. No? I think we have to be clear and ask for better systems regarding autonomous vehicles. We don't envisage a future with autonomous vehicles with more requirements from infrastructure than what human drivers require. No? It's something that we should envisage. We need to we need a common understanding between the developers of autonomous driving systems and road operators. We need to show them what is feasible, and then they have to ask us what they need. No? This close cooperation, I think, is needed, and we have to make a simple environment and simple system for all that. I think that as it's been mentioned in the previous presentations, when in the different pools, we need to organizational issues are also really going to be really interesting to tackle. No? Well, I would like to finish with my first statement. In our future developments, I think this will be the case. We need safer infrastructure. This will be the case for autonomous cars, and we really have to check if any extra features or developments are needed. And we should continue to ask for funding for safer infrastructure in our roads and streets, with something which will also be good for autonomous vehicles. DGT Spain is really pleased to be a Slane partner, and the recent results confirm our ongoing commitment to have safer roads for connected and autonomous vehicles. I think this will be our approach.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your first introduction in this panel and your ongoing commitment to the safe Slane results. I'm going now to the more specific question to Yannis. So, Yannis, do you consider that the results that we have just shown from Anditi, that we presented today, if it allows us to have an overview of the core road network with respect to the readiness for welcoming, of course, full automation?
Well, thank you for the question. The fact is that I will try to reply as a civil servant, as working for the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. The fact is that we saw amazing achievements. We have an overview of the core network in some countries, but I'm afraid that this is not enough, because you have put some specific aspects, 5 parameters for assessing the roads and the infrastructure, but is it enough for being safe for the circulation of an autonomous car in the roads, in the core network, and the urban then, and or rural? So this is something that we have to consider, and we have to consider as well if we will have a holistic approach as Europe, or we will create some national policies on the field. In my opinion, we have to have a horizontal and harmonized approach in Europe, both for the infrastructure and the means that they will transport on the infrastructure. And we have also to have in mind that mobility will increase the coming years, except if we have a COVID problem as well. So we have to consider how CAV and the infrastructure will operate together, but in European level, not in national level. Apart from that, we have to consider what will be the future in the coming 10 years, because as we also heard today, in 10 years, we expect to have a full automated car in the roads. So do we have enough time to prepare ourselves, to prepare the CAV, to prepare the infrastructure, and to prepare the law as well, to have this circulation of these automated cars? We have to work not in parallel, but all together, and to create a horizontal approach, a holistic approach in the field. And we have to work also in national level after having this horizontal approach, because as I saw, and I expect it will be the same in all other European countries, the level of maturity of the infrastructure and the signs and the roads are not the same all over Europe. So we have to see what we lack of, what we need to do more in national level, but always with a view of the European approach.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I want to stop now. I would like to say a few words about the assessment that was presented through a poll. Well, an assessment is needed as soon as we have a good assessment, a total assessment of our roads. It will be easier to go a step further. And who will make the assessment? A body, an entity that is a third party having all the credentials to offer objective assessment. And this assessment has to be done as soon as possible, but always through a horizontal kind of approaches. And these approaches could be the EuroRAP, maybe the EuroRAP assessment schedule, so that to proceed a step further. So that's for the time. I will come back again soon.
Thank you, Yannis. Your statement or your answer takes me to a variety of questions. You have covered the issue of interoperability, and would like also is to go to Luigi, because as part of SLAIN, what we have covered as well is interoperability of data sets. So we had a task, we had to compare the assessment that we did as from an IRA perspective, and also with the data sets of a Delphi vehicle from the ANAS network. So Luigi, would you like to tell us a bit about these results, and what are the other initiatives that you're doing right now at ANAS on connected and automated driving?
Yeah, thanks, Lina. Thanks above all for the invitation. Hello everyone, and I think I am speaking on behalf of the whole ANAS. We are all very involved on issue concerning autonomous and connected driving. More generally, what we call and summarizes in the concept of the smart mobility. We started a deep digital transformation process on our infrastructure in order to meet the important needs in the management and the supervision of the road network. We are creating deep synergies with the main stakeholders at national and then international level, actively working in the field of experimentation and technological innovation. All this in order to adapt, as we are already doing, the infrastructure supporting vehicle with first connected and then autonomous driving. To me, connected and autonomous vehicles mean greater safety for road users. Latest generation devices such IoT sensors, connectivity system, and all system V2X technology offers new opportunity to enhance user security by allowing an increasingly complete, responsive, and connected view of the infrastructure. When it comes to autonomous or connected driving, the approach is centered on the vehicle, forgetting the necessary evolution of the infrastructure. The higher the automation level, 1 to 5, the greater the infrastructure performance. The goal is to further develop this concept. This will include identifying all road features that are significant for the autonomous vehicle to be able to travel safely. ANAS, as well as other Italian organizations, are working closely to complete the digital transformation of the road infrastructure. In the last years, ANAS has been implementing the Smart Road program. The SMART program allows to implement a digital transformation process for about 3,000 kilometers on the road and highway in major national interest. Actually, there are about 300 millions of euro in investment already financed for interventions. The first phase currently underway concerns the main road route in the country. The first road will be of Alemannia Road. Alemannia Road is the road that link highway to Cortina. Cortina is the site for the next championship of ski in the next February. For us is a very important moment. Okay, other highway to implement in the program will be the ring road in Rome, the Fiumicino Airport highway that link airport to Rome. The Orte Mestre is an important road that link north and south in Italy, and other highway in Sicily. The project is very, very important, and for us, we have 3 pillars on our project. Smart technology. We will be a platform to implement connectivity. For us, important to have both technology. We know that the technology in Europe now are 2 cellular V2X and 11P Wi-Fi. In ANAS, we know that both the technology in a road to permit to link different car that speak different language. Okay, this is very, very important for us. And in our smart road, we have block of about 300 meters on the road, and this is for to better monitoring and surveillance the road. We have smart camera with plug-in with different technology of artificial intelligence. Okay, and I think that project is very, very important, and the next 5 years Italy is ready to finance this project for other 800 millions of euro, and I think is very, very important to in Italy and in Europe.
Thank you very much for this, Luigi. And what was also interesting, because we didn't cover the issue on the data sets, on the comparison of data sets, that it was not a big difference in the results between your own assessment and the results that were done under the EuroRAP together, that they were done under the SLANE project. Yes, so the results were compared in the same way, and the results were the same. And I think what it states out is that interoperability is key, and I think it was very great to see these common results. Thank you, Luigi. And I'm going a bit back a bit to the issue of road markings. And Rick, you are the expert in this. And what do you think are the recommendations from the, let's say, or new technology developments that we see from the industry? And tell us a bit also about the traffic signs perspective from your point of view. And then I will ask also HP about the traffic signs. So we will complement this question in 2 ways.
Thank you, Lina. First of all, I think it was a very good session this morning. I was really impressed with Leonid, good summary. And then also Peter and Rob, I think they made some very interesting statements on how digitization can help us to prioritize where investments can be made. So I think this is definitely excellent information for the road authorities, where they can put their money first and have the maximum impact on safety, because I think this is definitely the first target. Also the target by the Commission is to have the synergy between the driver assistance, and the infrastructure. So this is what the third mobility package is about saving lives. And I think also the industry from ERF and its members, we are trying to make the infrastructure more visible to the cameras, to the LiDAR. We can't change much about what's happened beyond the lens, how the artificial intelligence is going to look at it, but at least in the first step, we can make the image that is picked up by the lens, we can make it more clear, we can make it more visible, and we can make sure that the data can be processed further and the information is more robust. So I think there are three comments I want to make, and I think Rob mentioned it too, is really standardization and harmonization. Here in Europe, we have a lot of traffic that crosses border, a lot of goods, or trucks are passing, people are traveling or using their car to go from north to south, east to west. So we need, especially here in Europe and of course worldwide, we need standardization and harmonization. So we need to make sure that human as well as the ADAS is not getting confused, because I think we will have both ADAS and the traditional drivers for a very long time. So I think Peter made it sure that, or showed it, that the Vienna Convention is important. How are signs designed? How is information put on sign? How is the information interpreted by the car? At 3M, we have tried to put some codes in it that are infrared readable, but of course you need then also the right sensor to pick it up, and then how do you roll it out to the critical sign? So as the old expression says, you need two to tango, and if you want a conversation, you need at least two people in the room. So the Vienna Convention is important. I think what was not mentioned is the difficulty with subsigns and intrinsic signs, because a lot of speed information is not clearly indicated on the sign. So you need some signs like city borderlines, they implicit a certain speed, and this is also very difficult to be picked up. So as you said, we are with the Road Federation, we are very active at CEN, because finally road markings and traffic signs, they are part of a public tender, and they need to have performance criteria on daytime visibility, colors, brightness, durability. And today everything is based on the human eye. So we need to know how the machine vision, how the standards can also pick up these machine vision requirements. And I think the Australian assessment you've done with Ausroads showed, and other reports as well, showed how important contrast is for machine vision. And I think now with the sun behind me, we know that the contrast is going down. It's more even, road marking may be very easy to read at 12 o'clock at noon, but when the sun starts to set, when it gets night, when it rains, things are going, the contrast is getting difficult. And also, as mentioned by Peter, concrete versus asphalt, you may have a good marking, but still it may be difficult to read. So also from the industry and from 3M, we are also trying to make road markings better and more visible when it rains. So there is technology today to provide these road markings to be visible when even water is standing or during continuous rain. So the technology is there. And I think this could be definitely applied in cities where you cannot make physical separation all the time between bikers and cars. So you want to do it in a more visible way. So again, these are things that could definitely help to reduce accidents and where the RISM is going to look at. I think a point last point is a thing that wasn't really came out, and is the durability. And this is definitely something the industry will have to look at. It's going to be pushed by the European Green Deal. The way the construction product regulation will be revised is the aspect of durability, because here again, we have a whole win-win for the society. I'm not only talking about the environmental impact and how products disappear into the environment, Also talking about circular economy. These are things that everybody, the whole society is going to look at. So also the industry will have to look at this, but also durability has a win for road safety, because if you can extend the life cycle of your product, you prevent roadworks, you prevent a critical mobility situation, traffic jams. So everybody will also benefit from a more durable product. So there are multiple wins about that. And I think the European Commission will tackle that with the revision of the CPR as well. So that's what I wanted to make some comments for the moment. Thank you, Lina.
Thank you, Rick. And since we are still on the regulatory part, I know HP, you are totally involved in on the general safety regulation, and you know, of course, ADA systems. Some of them will be, of course, mandatory from 2022. What are your experience so far with this work, and what is this link with the traffic sign work? So how these two directives are linked to each other again? RIS2 and GSR.
Thank you, Lina. First of all, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for the invitation. I also would like to state that ASEA very much appreciates the work of EuroRAP for assessing the roads. This is an extremely important work you do. As you said, my work this year was very much concentrated on the general safety regulation, where the new legislation is described for mandatory assistant driver or advanced driver assistance systems, which will be mandatory by 2022. And we faced quite a lot of challenges here. One of the main topics in the GSR is the intelligent speed assistant, which needs a sign catalog. And there is really just a handful of signs. We talk about 10 signs, key signs, explicit and implicit signs. And we face really big challenges here because we have so many differences in Europe. So everything said about harmonization and standardization, I could not agree more to that. The signs are extremely different. It is tough to get the information because the authorities have catalogs if we get them in the national language. So it is funny, but we actually looked for colleagues speaking the language of these member states just to translate the text. And they are not safety experts, but we need some people that they can translate the text to know what is actually written in this legislation. Another sample is, and I think that was not mentioned today, we have a lot of variable signs on the roads as well. So on LEDs, on the highways, for example. And what we face with the systems we need to introduce in the vehicles is the frequency of these signs is also not standardized. So you will have cameras, they are not capable of reading these signs because they can't read them. You see pictures of these signs, and you could not identify anything on it. So again, standardization, harmonization is a very important topic, and the whole approach as a system, the vehicle manufacturers, we have a big job to do on this part. This is clear, but again, the infrastructure is not where it needs to be. Not for the others. We will bring into the market soon, and as these are the basements for autonomous vehicles, and we will see a mixture of vehicles driving around for a long time. It is very important that the infrastructure is improved and assessed. And I read it in the chat as well. I think education is also a big important part, as well as enforcement. Thank you.
Yeah, and also HP, what you mentioned is quite clear. It's I think educating the public, and of course I'm also representing also as an association also the users, the mobility club. So I think educating the users, which could be in the future, they could also be they need this type of education for not only ADAS systems, but also education also on the systems themselves. And also they also need to be informed also about the infrastructure as well.
Absolutely.
And that will be key also for the users themselves, not only the vehicles. Now moving a bit on the, let's say, the technology side, and we're talking a lot about the technology from the infrastructure. I would like also to move and also from the vehicle side, and now I would like to ask also Arnold and you, and again, thank you very much for your involvement in the SLANE project. Looking also on the presentation of Rob, we have a lot of targets to reach at the UN level and EU. How can TomTom support road authorities in this? And again, how can you support programs like us? We are doing cover road assessments.
Yeah, no, thanks. First of all, thanks, Lina, to have TomTom represented in this panel. Indeed, it is true that both the UN as well as I think also the EU obviously have very ambitious targets around road safety. And that's for TomTom, we are very happy with that evolution. Safety is very close to our heart. We actually have as a mission that we want to create location technology that contributes to a safer, cleaner and congestion-free world. So safety is extremely important in our overall mission. So as a location technology specialist, I believe we can contribute in many different ways. And I'm really grateful to both Peter and Rob because they already indicated in different ways how TomTom is contributing to that. Maybe first we have, of course, we have maps for navigation, advanced maps for navigation. But we also have maps to drive and enable specific ADAS attributes, so ADAS functionalities like advanced driving assistance functionality. And next to that, and that's the next phase, and I saw a lot of communication about that in the chat, we also develop what we call high definition maps, maps that are primarily used for highly automated and autonomous driving. So all these maps contain quite some content that is used or can be used in safety-related and also CEV-related functionalities, and it is already used in a lot of automotive systems. But the same information can also be used as attributes in the road safety assessment. And Rob referred to the 52 attributes in the EuroRAP scoring. So a lot of those attributes can actually be derived from our global map data, both the navigation map data as well as the ADAS maps and the HD maps. But maybe important next to that is also our traffic services. We have traffic services for over 70 different countries, a lot of them in Europe. And those traffic services are based on GPS trace data that we derive from over 600 million devices worldwide. And these devices are both, let's say, running TomTom applications, but even more so also applications of third-party providers on handsets, automotive systems, also fleet management systems, logistics, and so on. So with those data, we basically generate real-time traffic information as well as historical traffic stats. And what I would like to see as an important next step in the whole road safety assessment is that we actually go beyond the more static assessment of road safety into a more dynamic assessment, which includes the integration of these traffic data, like average speed, congestion data, jam tail behavior, traffic incidents, and so on. So by doing that, we would definitely achieve a more richer and also more dynamic understanding of road safety characteristics. At the same time, these traffic data and the GPS trace data also enable us to provide detailed views on the 75% most driven roads, for example. Rob did show some maps that we generated to basically provide a baseline for those 75% most driven roads. Peter referred a lot to our mobile mapping units, and that's another way we can contribute to road safety assessment and CAV assessment. We run already for more than 20 years now mobile mapping units across the globe. We drive every year between 3 and 4 million kilometers. So we have a very large archive of panorama, so the 360-degree camera views, as well as very dense LiDAR point cloud data. And that archive is now also made available for interested parties, such as Anditi, EuroRAP, but also many other authorities and technology partners can actually utilize these data to extract the various road attributes that are needed, and as showcased by Anditi. So also for TomTom, these mobile mapping data are a quite crucial source. So we are continuously upgrading our data collection capabilities, also the processes, the data intake, and so on. And those continuous upgrades will also obviously benefit our external partners. So and maybe last, of course, the budgetary implications of doing road safety assessments are very important. So since we are using these data also for internal use, we can actually offer the same data to external parties at very competitive price points, which is important to enable scaling, to enable repeatability as well, and to reduce the overall cost of road safety assessment.
Thank you, Arnold. And of course, coming back on this issue of, let's say, big data, George. So what are the benefits of this new reality of roads that cars can read on with big data, and what you are doing at the Attikes Diadromes motorway in Greece?
Well, okay, as we know, first of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be part of this roundtable. Also, good morning or evening to everybody. Okay, first of all, we know that the road operators are supposed to go through a transition phase, okay, in line with the emerging technologies and the adoption and the penetration of the autonomous vehicles circulating on the roads. So, and we don't expect this to, to go to the other side of overnight or over a short period of time. It will take years, decades, in effect. Okay, in order to have a certain percentage of autonomous vehicles driving on the roads, I'm mostly talking about motorways, not the urban network. Now, this will take some investments, of course, investments from the side of the operators. And of course, we have the usual question, who is going to pay for this? One thing we have to take in mind. So investments is one thing. Investments in altering the geometry characteristics of the roads themselves, in terms of lanes, harbors, service lanes, parkings, ramps, exits, entries, dedicated lanes, platooning lanes, lot of things. Investments in digitalizing the infrastructure and make it, transform the physical attributes to digital ones, and also re-engineering in the operations. Okay, operations in terms of maintenance, service operations, all these kinds of things. This takes trainings. It's a very different, it's a very complex environment. So we try to be in touch with this. Okay, we try to be in touch with projects that invest in CITS technologies, in autonomous, in the interaction with autonomous vehicles. We try to get in touch with EuroRAP in the actions that EuroRAP is taking place at, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I think, George, what you captured also on the investment side is also quite important. And you captured it fantastically, because this is exactly the conclusion that was in the reports. Because it is not still clear about where investments needs to go first. Will it go to physical? Will it go to digital? Or will it go to operationally? And of course, Hert captured also the traffic management perspective. So I think what I would like to ask you is just one quick question about where do you see first maybe priorities going? Would it go to the physical infrastructure, digital? I know that there are many already, a lot of pilots happening under the Sea Roads project, where I know Yannis, I know Anna, and I know Luigi, you are also involved in the Sea Roads actions with respect of updating the digital infrastructure. But and also, we also have to understand the operational side, which is the traffic management. And again, we are in a kind of, and we cannot see them as competition, for sure not. So we have to take steps, and I think the steps needs to go more on the policy goals, on what we need to achieve. How many fatalities do we need to save? How much traffic do we need to save as well? So we also have to see where our policy goals are more important. I'm opening up the floor with this type of question to all of you, and I'm all ears. This question.
Well, if I may follow up, I mean,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, this is a huge topic for discussion, of course. If I may touch upon a few things. Okay, we understand that probably technology, the soft part, okay, the digital part, can move on quite faster than the physical part in terms of money and effort required. Now, there are some pieces, let's say, of the puzzle that I think we could move on forward, maybe in a quicker pace. For example, the HD maps. We talk about HD maps, they tend to come up, in the discussions. It's definitely a useful tool, so we have to invest on that. Now, I don't know who is supposed to operate, let's say, maintain and be liable for the HD maps. Also, liability is a key thing here. But I understand that the road operators have to contribute on that. Okay, update.
While you are talking, James, would you like to have a Mentimeter as a poll to the audience on where the priority will go, physical, digital, operational, just to have a bit of flavor from the audience on that question?
And a second note, okay, and I leave the floor. We're talking about, we understand that machine vision and AI and all related technologies will do their job down the road. Okay, may take a few years. So, but this is for the horizon of the vehicle. In order to extend the horizon of the vehicle, this is the place where the road operators come into effect. Okay. The machine vision can get better and better, but in order to give information to the vehicle that this information may, regard an event that is 2 miles down the road, so we're not talking about cameras and LiDAR in that case, it takes communication between the vehicle and the infrastructure, and actually IOV, infrastructure to vehicle. These are a few things, HD maps and the communication, V2I communication, that I believe we are already investing, and we could invest more in the following years.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Anyone else wants to take the question?
Yeah, Lina, Rick here again. I think road safety, if we talk road safety, I think as I put in the chat box as well, is it's definitely a priority for education, focusing on the road user enforcement, improving the vehicle, improving the infrastructure system.
Sorry, can we ask Rofe to unmute yourself? Thank you. Sorry, Rick.
Yeah, so I think of course, for us, road first, I think for everybody, as we will have mixed traffic for a long time, the physical road infrastructure will remain a basic component of, let's say, call it the foundation of the pyramid that will be built on it, or the house that will be built on it. So you need a good road to drive. You don't want any accidents. You don't because of bad road quality. So I think this will continue to play an important role. But I also fully recognize, and I think this was indicated by the previous speakers as well, this interaction vehicle to car, vehicle to infrastructure. And this is, I think, what the third mobility package is aiming, because we are now forcing the consumer to buy cars with ADAS, and we need to make sure that these ADAS equipment can be fully can play a full benefit to road safety, because you want the cameras to detect the lane markings, you want the intelligent speed adaptation to have the right information. And I think also Johannes Peter pointed it out, there are areas where things can be improved. So for us, I think, I'm not saying that, of course, I have to say that physical road infrastructure is a priority, but I think the interaction with the driver, with the car, is becoming more and more important. Thank you.
Perhaps, Lina, I directly jump in to what Rick said. I've anyway written in the chat. I fully agree. I think we have to take one more thing into account. So you have a physical infrastructure that need to be assessed, and it need to be harmonized and standardized. And we are far away from having this. But we also see the problem we're currently in developing the legislation together with the European Commission, for example, for the intelligent speed assistant. It is not only that you have to read the signs. Very often the signs are connected to traffic rules. And sometimes there even are no signs. So in Germany, you have the situation if you go on a certain speed road. If you have one lane, you have a speed limit. If there are two lanes, you have another speed limit, and there is no sign. There is one sign that indicates you are on a speed road, but you do not have a specific sign. So it is a difference because you have two lanes, or that you have a barrier in between the lanes to the opposite direction. In the UK, we found a case that the distance of the light poles indicates how quick you can drive. There is no sign, and this makes it really difficult. And we need to take this into account as well as you have different vehicle use cases. So if you have a trailer on your vehicle as a passenger car or as a truck, you have different rules. If you carry the dangerous goods, you have different rules, and they are all not indicated by signs, but they are known by the vehicles, and they are somehow also part of infrastructure, and in this case more a digital infrastructure, because there are very often no physical signs, and probably there will be none, because then you will have even more signs as today. And sometimes I personally have the opinion or the feeling that there are so many signs, you just don't know what you have to follow. So this is a big challenge as well.
Yeah. I would like, yes, Anna.
Hi. Well, thank you. Just to support a little bit what is being said, I think that the priority, not just for autonomous vehicle, would be, this update of infrastructure to make it more safe, to make it safer, especially in some stretches that taking assessment as EuroRAP or the system that will come from the European directive will help, probably help a lot. I mean, the assessment is good to know where you will make focus for an upgrade of the infrastructure. Regarding connectivity, I support what Gert told before. The NAVS initiative will also foster road safety, and also the deployment of some connectivity use cases. We have the experience of the data task force, in which many OEMs and road operators got involved regarding this information regarding to safety. I think this is something that we can follow and focus, and that we must foster. And for sure, I think from the side of vehicle, it should also demonstrate its readiness. I mean, to perform, to have a better performance, as we are asking our human drivers. I think they should also demonstrate their readiness to ride our roads. That would be our vision.
Thank you very much, Anna. I want to open up also, we have 5 minutes remaining, and I do not know whether people from the audience would like a bit to come up and ask few questions with the panelists. So the floor is open for the audience, for the participants. Questions to the panelists? Okay, silence. Okay. So thank you very much, James, for the quick, let's say, poll that we had with respect to where the priority should go. Again, what we are saying is that there will be a approach to financing. We understand that. We understand that both physical infrastructure, digital and also operational, will need different types of countermeasures and, of course, upgrades in the system. We also have a lot of discussions right now about 5G, about ITG5 deployment. So we know that we have a lot of sides of discussions on where investment should go, even on the digital side, and things are not clear yet there either. But what is clear, from my opinion, is that we have a goal, and I think the goal, we want to save lives. We want to have a seamless traffic. We do not want to have traffic that we don't want to be congested. Of course, we discussed about circular economy. We want to have safe vehicles, safe infrastructure, and again, safe behavior, which is all about the safe system approach that we need to entail it. Saying that, I do not know whether anybody else wants to say anything, because I have some concluding slides. Do anyone from the chat wants to pop up and say something, or you are happy with the chat? I guess you are very happy with the chat function. I'm really pleased, actually. You were quite active today with respect to the chat. I am planning to share my concluding slides. Again, a big thank you to all of you. I really appreciate your interventions for both speakers and panelists. What I also would like to tell you is that we have the 2 reports that were described today in our website under the Slane, under the EuroRAP/Slane webpage, where you can find both D7.1 and D7.2 of the Slane project. Be aware that these are going to be shared to all the participants after this call. What is also interesting, and for me, I would like again to thank the Slane Consortium, and that includes also ANAS, DGT, the Croatian and the Greek Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, and also GenCat, who have been, and also all the Slane Consortium, EuroRAP, Panos Milonas, FPZ. I'm forgetting names and consortium partners right now, so please forgive me. But I would like to thank again TomTom, Factual, and Anditi for performing such an excellent work. But not only that, I would like to thank our reviewers of the report. As you know, we have been very inclusive to our reporting, to all of the two reports. A big thank you to Lila Gaitanidou from CERT, to Wouter van den Bergen from VIAS, to Dr. John Fletcher from TRL, to HP from ASEA, Rick Rutens from 3M, Risto Kulmala from Traficon, and Michelle van Rattingen from EuroNCAP for being a part of our reviewing, our external reviewers for this work. And a bit on some other items, we are also happy to tell you that we have a date for our Slane final event. It's going to be on Thursday, 4th of March, 2021. The areas are going to cover all the activities of Slane with respect to the methodology of network-wide road assessment and all the star ratings and crash maps that we have delivered over the 4 member states, as well as a lot of proposals for crash countermeasures. And again, we will have also results from the final results of Activity 7 on automation on the automatic coding methodology, where also Rob has been discussing about. Now, again, if you have any questions with respect to this webinar, my contact details are here. Again, if you cannot find me, if you cannot capture the email, because I know it's long and it's Greek, you can for sure find me in either Twitter or LinkedIn. But again, a big thank you to all of you for staying for 3 hours long. I know it's difficult in these circumstances. Again, have a wonderful rest of your day, and goodbye to all of you. And what I would like to ask you, if you can all open your cameras to have a Christmas goodbye. Can you all open your cameras? That would be great to have a Merry Christmas from Slane. Please don't be shy. Put your cameras on. Yes. So happy Merry Christmas to all of you, and happy holidays and healthy holidays to all of you. Thank you very much to all. Thank you. Goodbye.